But it's still 35 minutes, right? Not too long. West Wayne Station, 2 minutes.
Okay. We're getting ready to get started.
Oh, do you use the mic on, Marcy, with that one or? Yeah, turn it on.
Good evening, and welcome to another outstanding Health Executive Club event. I welcome you all, and I definitely would like to thank our supporting collaborating organizations, which is the Black Long-Term Care Executives. We have the Association for Risk Management New York, and also we have Health Information Management Systems Society, known as HIMSS, who are partnering and collaborating with us in many, many events, and we look forward to you continuing that practice in the future. And that is why we have this pizza, because that's specifically for Tony from HIMSS. Just a couple of points of information. See, that's why I cannot be an actress, because I like to do it my way. And he likes it his way. You get it? Is this better, or should I?
You can move over.
Okay.
It's fine.
Just points of information. In the front.
Should put a little thing. Should put placements on the floor. Put a little extra down there.
I feel after all this, I should just put some salsa music on and get down.
Take two.
Just some point of information. This program has been recorded, and you will have a copy of the video available to you as soon as we complete editing the video. And we also have approved by NAB 1.5 continuing education credits for those that require that. Please, please, please make sure that you complete the survey that is on your table. It's the yellow document, piece of paper. That information is very important to us. It tells us how we did for this particular event, and also allow us to get information and prepare for future events. So we appreciate if you do so. Tonight we have two speakers, and usually we have the presentation, they do the presentation, and then we ask questions. But tonight they're free to actually do it whichever way they feel best. So they might be doing their presentation and encourage questions, or they might ask you to hold the questions until the end. I would leave that up to them. Tonight we have, there we go. Tonight we have two great speakers. We have Dr. Helen Arteaga-Landaverde, Chief Executive Officer of New York City Health and Hospital, Elmhurst, and Louise Cohen. This has been quite complicated with this sort of thing in my hand. I'm going to get ready to put it down in a minute, because it's not me. As I told Dennis, I like to do things my way, so forget that. And Louise Cohen, the Chief Executive Officer of Primary Care Development Corporation, PCDC, as most of us that are familiar with the industry know the organization. The topic tonight is most recent developments with New York State 1115 waiver geared to enhance funds and services for the population covered by Medicaid. My voice went up a little because I always emphasize the intent of what the regulations and the funding is. As we move forward in the future, we can look back and hopefully we got to that point. We accomplished the goal. Our speaker tonight is Dr. Helen Arteaga-Landaverde, who serves as the CEO of New York City Health and Hospital Elmhurst. Now, I'm not going to read the entire bio. Dennis doesn't like when I do that. However, I think that, and so you can read it, you can get information on her background and get information on, where she came from, both of them, and how they got here. But one of the things I really wanted to make a point is this paragraph is very important, at least to me. Because she's the CEO, as I said, at Elmhurst Hospital. And she accomplished that in 2021. And if nothing else, accomplishment, 2021 was in the middle of COVID. And to just have the thought of saying, yes, I can do this in the middle of COVID in a healthcare facility in the middle of New York City in itself is a major accomplishment in my mind. She's the first woman of color and the first Latina to lead the hospital executive team. Under Helen's leadership, New York City Health and Hospital Elmhurst has been recognized as one of U.S. News and World Report's best regional hospitals and one of the nation's high-performing hospitals in 9 individual service areas, including heart failure, heart attacks, stroke, hip fractures, kidney failure, orthopedic pneumonia, and COPD. In September of 2023, the Joint Commission recognized Elmhurst as the first hospital in New York State to achieve a Health Equity Gold Standard certification based on the facility's dedication to reducing disparities in healthcare, access, outcome, and experiences. This is important to me, and it should be to all of us, because usually when we talk about inner city healthcare facilities, you always hear, especially if we talk about health and hospital, which I work there by the way, so I know, you always hear about what they're not doing and what they're not accomplishing and all the things that are not good. But I wanted to take the opportunity to really certify that there are good things happening, and they're happening in Elmhurst. Our second speaker is Louise Cohen, and she's the Chief Executive Officer of the Primary Care Development Corporation. And I'm going to read exactly what that is, because those that are not familiar with the FQHC world and community-based organizations may not know what that is. And it's a nonprofit community development financial institution dedicated to expanding and strengthening the primary care safety net in the United States. PCDC provides capital, technical assistance to a wide variety of primary care providers and advocates for improved and increased primary care access, capacity, quality reimbursement, capital resources in order to improve health outcomes, create healthier communities, increase health equity, reduce overall health system cost. That is a big, big, big job. And so tonight, I would like for you to help me in welcoming our speakers. Helen Arteaga-Landaverde and Louise.
Welcome to my beloved hospital, Elmhurst Hospital. I'm so happy to be hosting. I think this is a great way to share ideas among other leaders that we have here. So thank you for coming. And I know it's raining, it's a little chilly outside, but thank you for coming. I feel so much food, so eat up, so eat now, eat a little later. Louise will definitely make you hungry, because after speaking about the 11:15 waiver, either you'll be very happy, you'll be like, oh, let me eat and celebrate, you're going to be very sad, and then you're like, let me eat anyway. So either way, it's a win-win for all of us. But I really want to thank you a little bit about our hospital. We are part of the health system here, New York City Health and Hospital, which is the largest public health system here in the U.S. And we speak about 125 different languages here at Elmhurst, which is about 90 to 92 different cultures and religions here. And we do about 1 million visits a year. It's 1 million plus now. We're a very busy hospital. We're level 1 trauma center, double diamond OR, which I love to brag about, because most people don't realize that our ORs here, not only do we have 2 robotics, but we do the caliber of what private hospitals do for our patients. The type of surgeries that happen here are not only innovative, but also like new technology is happening, and we're setting up practices on the most rarest diseases that you can think about are happening here at Elmhurst. We're a team of 6,000 strong. We're 5 buildings, even though that might sound like big and a lot of people. It feels very small after you've been here a while. I feel like we don't have any space anymore. But we're a strong team. We're a happy team. We work very hard to get 1 million people throughout these doors. You have to be very efficient, and one of the things that makes us very efficient and the way we're able to do those 1 million visits a year is by teamwork. Teamwork among each other, teamwork with our community partners, teamwork with our community providers, and definitely teamwork with our CBOs. PCDC is not only a partner of ours in making sure we have primary care access, because we have an AmCare center, and we actually have the biggest one in our health system. We're bigger than Bellevue. Bellevue's always our competition. Bellevue's our mothership. But our primary care, we do there about like over 500,000 visits of outpatient care, which includes behavioral health as well. So one of the things when we're looking at primary care, not only are we a hospital, but we also think of the main entry to healthcare, which is our primary care doctors, and hence why our partnership with PCDC is so important, because not only do they hold us to the T of what we're supposed to be doing, but also it's where we learn and how we can become better. So I'm super excited to have all of you here, and talking about the 1115 waiver is super important. It's going to affect all of us somewhere, somehow, some way. So I'm super grateful that Louise is spending her evening with us here and helping us understand the 1115 waiver, which is not an easy task, but hopefully we can have a very good discussion and have open ideas on how we can make this all work. And with that, I welcome Louise Cohen.
All right, I have to come over here because I'm going to do things with, I'm going to move the slide deck along. But first, let me just understand a little bit about you all. How many of you feel like you're kind of experts in the 1115 waiver, understand Medicaid, 1115 waivers? How many of you feel like you're kind of middle of the road, you kind of know something, not too much? Okay, good. So how many people feel like this is new, not so much? Okay, good. So there's kind of a variety. And then how many of you work in like acute care facilities or ambulatory care, IT, other administration, long-term care? Okay, all right, specialty, okay, great. So I'm all about primary care, so I'm gonna talk about the 1115 waiver, but I'm also gonna kind of put it in a framework of primary care. But I also wanna be really clear, like I am not the state's expert on the 1115 waiver. I've learned a fair amount. I've been around the block more than once with various Medicaid waivers. And I cribbed a lot of my presentation from exactly what's on the New York State Department of Health website. So the fact of the matter is there's a lot of information there for you to find out more if you're interested in any of these things. But I'm glad to tell you what I know, and then I'm also glad sort of, with my other foot over here to talk about what I think about this, what my opinion is about it, which are not entirely the same thing. So first, let me just tell you, so thanks for the introduction around PCDC, but so PCDC was originally founded in the David Dinkins administration. Basically, he said healthcare is a human right, and we don't have enough primary care in communities of color in New York City. And how can we get there without spending a lot of city money? And so this public-private partnership was formed that basically said we need to create more access points for primary care, particularly in low-income communities of color. We need to bring more primary care providers in. We need to have a higher quality of care for those folks because that's critically important to people's health and well-being and community health and well-being. So we were started with a $17 million city grant, essentially, with a capitalization to lend that out to organizations who wanted to grow primary care, particularly in Black communities and low-income communities in New York City. And then we got a $250 million state bond, and sort of that set us on our way to really do what we've done. And we have sort of 3 main things that we do and have done for many years. And the first thing is that we invest in primary care, which means we essentially provide loans, often low cost, to primary care organizations, often federally qualified health centers, but often safety net hospitals or behavioral health organizations as well, to grow access points, to improve their services in communities, not only now in New York City, but now we work around the country. The second thing that we do is we provide a lot of technical assistance. So particularly primary care struggles a lot in this world, which is this incredibly complicated healthcare space that we're in. Which is not to say that hospitals aren't also, incredibly complicated places, and long-term care, obviously, very complicated places. But primary care has its particular struggles, its particular bent on what it needs to do, and it's struggling, right? There's a lot of concerns around whether or not we're gonna have a sufficient primary care workforce. A lot of primary care providers are retiring. They're being sort of acquired by big hospital systems, and some to their benefit and some perhaps not to their benefit. And so our third pillar of what we do is we advocate for policies in New York State and across the country that will promote primary care. And we're not saying that we should not give money to hospitals or to long-term care. Obviously, these are all critically important things. But primary care, which is sort of the entry point, right, for people coming into the healthcare system, it gets 5 cents on the healthcare dollar, right? 5 to 7 cents. It's not sufficient for what we all want it to do. And the idea that we have is that this is something that is sort of a growing movement around the country, is to try to increase that percentage of the healthcare dollar that's going to primary care. And the way we want to do it is by looking at what health insurers pay for primary care and for other services. We want to continue the movement to reduce unneeded hospitalizations and emergency room visits by creating a robust primary care system. And in order to do that, we need investment. So we've done some work in New York State's legislature. There's a number of other states that are doing this, and Oregon and Delaware and Colorado, all around the country, there's this movement around really trying to increase the percentage of the healthcare dollar that goes into primary care. So we're in that world as well. We look at a lot of these policies, a lot of things like the 1115 waiver, from the lens of primary care. And I'm going to talk to you about what's actually in the waiver, because so I'll give you the hint. There's very little in this waiver about primary care. Just these are some of the things that we've done. This is just an example of one of the projects that we financed sort of as they were, doing their groundbreaking. But since our $17 million New York City capitalization, we've actually invested about $1.7 billion in financing across the country in primary care and behavioral health. We've provided capital and services across the country in about 44 states. We've helped build a lot of square footage. We've helped organizations transform to become higher quality, better, with a more successful workforce. And in New York State, we've helped a lot of organizations get what's called patient-centered medical home recognition, or PCMH recognition. And this is a recognition program that's national. It's important for the story about the 1115 waiver, so just put a pin in this, which is that the patient-centered medical home is a series of things that any primary care practice needs to do in order to get recognized by a third party, by NCQA, the National Commission on Quality Association, or something very close to that. I got the initials right, but maybe not all the words. And so with NCQA PCMH recognition, there is the opportunity to get additional funding into your facility, whether you're a primary care or a specialty care or behavioral health, and that comes through various state programs, but it also could come through other folks as well. And the kinds of organizations that we tend to work with are, as you mentioned, federally qualified health centers. Do you all know what those are? No? Tell me no if you don't. Okay, all right. So federally qualified health centers are health centers. So Helen is sort of the expert in this. She ran one in this community called Plaza del Sol, which is it's a federal designation. It's an organization that has met certain benchmarks and then gets some additional federal funding in order to provide high quality care to everyone in the community regardless of their ability to pay. And this is really a critical model for primary care because it involves providing full service, whole person care across the life spectrum in a way that is, promotes quality, promotes the best outcomes possible. And so there's a number of these across the country, a couple thousand of them, and those are kind of what I would consider to be the critical access points for primary care in the safety net, just like this public hospital is a hospital that provides care for the safety net. So they're not privately owned, they're all not-for-profits. Their boards have to have a 51% community representation on them, and they're highly regulated, but they're also really important anchor institutions in communities. We also finance and work with behavioral health organizations, and we're really interested in the integration of care, right? So no wrong door. You walk in and you should get all the care that you need. And that's really what a primary care, a good primary care provider does. And just I think in the last year, the extra dollars we brought in just for the organizations that we helped to get this recognition program in New York State was $27 million. So it's really substantial in terms of the increased revenue for these folks to get this recognition. But it's not easy. You have to fulfill a lot of requirements in order to do it. And not everyone can, and not everyone gets this designation. So, page down, oops. Try that again. So, primary care this is the World Health Organization. It's basically, the World Health Organization just come out recently with a statement about primary care. And they've been doing this for a while. There was a famous conference in Kazakhstan, in Alma-Ata, that basically said primary care is the fundamental building block of any healthcare system. If you don't have primary care, you don't have prevention, you don't have early diagnosis, a treatment, referral to other levels of care. And that's sort of where we believe that healthcare should start. That not everyone hospitals are anchor institutions, long-term care are critically important institutions, but if you have a robust primary care system, you can actually help people be healthier, and so then they have to use a hospital or a tertiary care system when they really need it, as opposed to because they've been not taking care of their diabetes or something along those lines. Like, no one should have an amputation due to diabetes. We want hospitals there if that actually has to happen. We need rehab facilities if that has to happen, but that shouldn't be our norm, and we should. So that's just a good example of where we could do a much better job if we really had a robust primary care system. So Medicaid waivers. Medicaid, of course, covers an enormous number of people. It covers about a third of the people in New York State. And so we all use a lot of, shorthand. So 1115 waiver, like what the heck is that? So basically it's section 1115 of the Social Security Act. Like it actually has a reason why we call it this. And it basically says, look, there's because as you know, Medicaid is a federal program, but it's really run by the states. And so the federal government has to approve the program of any given state, but the state runs it, and the state is obligated to put in a fair amount of the money, and it different. So the federal folks put in a certain amount, and the state folks put in a certain amount. In New York State, it's roughly 50%, and in other states, it's not. New York State has a very robust Medicaid program. Many more people are covered. It has many more benefits covered, and which is a much higher threshold for getting Medicaid than many states have a much smaller Medicaid program with things like annual income caps of like $5,000 a year, and you can only be, it can only be a mom and kids, and no men. Sort of an adult who doesn't have insurance. So we in New York have a really robust program, and so the 1115 waivers allow for a state to propose innovations that otherwise would not be allowed under the Medicaid program. There are certain requirements for the Medicaid program, like statewide-ness, or there has to be everything in the Medicaid program has to be available to everyone.
Louise, am I right that, I think I read that 40% of residents in New York State receive Medicaid benefits?
Yeah, it may be even a little higher than that if you include like the Child Health Plus program. So it's a substantial
I think that
number
does
of people.
include the extension of the Affordable Care Act that was
It does, it includes the Medicaid expansion that happened under the Affordable Care Act. As you know, not every state expanded Medicaid, some did. And as you, I'm sure, know that during the pandemic, Medicaid was even expanded more widely, and now they're beginning to sort of push that.
In New York City alone, the 5 boroughs, about 23 or 24% of the population is under the poverty limit.
I don't know the exact
Yeah,
data on that,
There was a study done by the Robin Hood Foundation and Columbia University most recently, and it's 23, 24. When you think of a quarter of the population of New York City
Right.
is on that. I think the poverty limit is like $20,000 per individual.
Something in that.
Yeah.
So it's a, in other words, this is a program that touches a huge number of people.
Yeah.
Like, this is not a minor program. It's the equivalent in some ways of Medicare, right, that serves people over 65. So it is, you know, those are the two major big government benefit programs for healthcare.
The elders were suffering a lot because the income was $945 to Social Security. Now they increased it to $1,677 a year. I mean, for Medicaid.
Right.
That was amazing.
Right.
Because a lot of people couldn't afford to pay home care.
Absolutely. So,
That's a big,
right.
I'm very happy that happened.
Yeah, and what's really important is that there's a certain number of people over 65 or maybe younger folks who have a disability of some kind who are what are called dual eligibles. In other words, they have both Medicaid and Medicare. But this is really a program, so the waivers are interesting because, say the federal government, say that there's $1 going into the Medicaid program here in New York. The state pays more or less 50 cents and the feds pay more or less 50 cents. The waiver is a way to get additional dollars into the system with the theory that there's going to be a savings at the other end. So it has to be innovation and it has to be essentially fundamentally cost savings at some point down the line, right? So on January 9th, a long-awaited waiver proposal was approved by the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services, and it's about a $7.5 billion package, a little bit less actually, and it's called the New York Health Equity Reform Waiver, NIHER, but no one calls it that, they just call it the 1115 waiver. And it's about, I guess the 1.5 billion is separate, but about 6 billion of federal funding. So that's a lot of money coming in, and the theory that they want to do is advance health equity, reduce health disparities, and support the delivery of what they call social care, which sometimes called care for the social determinants of health, now called health-related social needs, HRSN. How many of you participated in the DISRIP program, which was the state's previous 1115?
I'm in Suffolk, well, we from New York, but it was sad to see it go, because it was helping a lot, and then it just felt like it was not those people.
Right.
Yeah.
So so each waiver has a big picture purpose. The last waiver, which was called DISRIP, Delivery System Reform, something that was fundamentally this idea that they were going to create systems of care. So they created most of them had a hospital at the center, and then basically the idea was that they were supposed to bring in all the providers around them, right? And frankly, there was a lot of controversy about this, right? That a lot of people felt that maybe the hospital shouldn't have been the center of these organizations. And there was a lot of money that got put into developing the governance. It spent a lot of years doing that kind of thing. And at this point, there's about 3 or 4 of those DISRIP systems out of the 20 or so that still remain, but most of them have really faded away, to your point. But there's one in South Brooklyn, there's one in Staten Island, there's one in the Bronx. So there's a couple and a couple upstate, right? So but there hasn't been additional funds coming through for those particular projects, and they were trying to reduce hospitalizations, unnecessary hospitalizations, preventable issues, right? That was kind of their main overarching idea. But the concept was to build systems of care, and I would argue that it's not clear to me that hospitals, but maybe Helen is a big exception here, are necessarily the right place to do this. During that time, there was a lot of discussion about social determinants of health. You all, I'm sure, have been part of this conversation. What's the importance of housing? What's the importance of education? All these things. And so a lot of community-based organizations in New York were saying, like, wait, we didn't get any funding from the district program, and that's really critical in order for us to move forward. So this waiver's overarching idea is to create a system that effectuates payments for social-related, health-related social needs through the Medicaid program. And that's its fundamental purpose, right? There are other waivers in other states that were fundamentally about improving primary care. That's one in Massachusetts and other places as well. California did one that actually revamped the entire healthcare system and really was focused around care management at all levels. So different states try to come up with different approaches, but this one was really built primarily around health-related social needs. So again, I cribbed all of the rest of these slides from the state. So, but I made them slightly less busy. So, but you can get on their website and see them, and obviously you can have this PowerPoint. But the first thing is these social care networks. So last time they created these hospital-based medical networks, right? And now they're going to create these social care networks. Right now there's an RFP in front of that a bunch of people are working on very hard. Probably, I think it's due Monday or something like that, and like they're all, working on it now. And the idea is that these are social care networks. They'll be probably in New York City, and there'll be one in every borough, I think, but there's like one per region upstate. And the idea is that this is going to be a community-based organization, most likely, and they're going to create an infrastructure to get referrals from a variety of sources, doctors, long-term care, hospitals, other folks, for people who are eligible, and there's a very specific series of eligibility that will then get, after an assessment, that will then get the services that are needed, and there's a very specific set of services that are going to be allowed to the people who need it. And but the payment for those services will go through the Medicaid managed care networks. So they're going to create these social care networks that are going to do all these assessments, and they're going to have all this data, and they're going to try to connect people up to CBOs that can do the service, but they're not going to actually, the services are actually going to get paid for from the managed care organizations. The idea is like a IPA or like an independent practice association, something like that, so that the CBOs, like a small CBO, I don't know if any of you work in CBOs, but like they don't know how to contract, or they can't contract with a Medicaid managed care organization, they're too small, they don't know how to do that, they don't have the right, they don't understand how to do this. So the idea is the social care networks will take care of that for them. There's a part that's strengthening the workforce. For those of you who did participate in district last time, they created these things called WEOs, Workforce Investment Organizations, and they did a lot of training. And that last time it was really a lot around long-term care, and this time it's going to be more around building the pipeline for healthcare, and student loan repayment is in here, which was interesting. And then there's a series of things that they call population health. And I'm going to go through all of these one by one. So I'm going to just point out that even though it says primary care here, and this is from the state's data, just remember that's actually a whole separate funding stream. I will talk about that in a minute. It doesn't come through the waiver process. So I'm going to just go through some of these. But this, and I really apologize, I had handouts and I did not get them here. Oh well.
You did print them out though.
I did print them out, and they are in my house, which is doing none of you any good.
Louise, you can send them to us and we'll distribute.
Yeah, so this is the money, and this is the bottom line, right? So there's gonna be something called a Health Equity Regional Organization, I'll talk about that in a minute, that's a planning group, that's probably gonna be one, okay, my best guess, this is where I'm saying, I'm stepping now into opinion, my best guess is it will be one of the big companies, Boston Consulting Group or Deloitte or somebody like that's probably going to be the backbone for that, but it'll be through the state health department, the governor's office. But the idea is like to do some planning, and originally the first concept of this had a lot of regional planning organizations, and that went away in favor of just one. There's going to be total of $500 million just for the social care network organizations. And then the actual health-related social needs services, so for example, an air conditioner or railings for like bathrooms or whatever the things are that are gonna be paid for, is $3.4 billion. So a lot of money is gonna go into the actual healthcare related social needs. It's almost half the pot, right? Then I'm gonna skip over the primary care system model because that's actually not really happening through this. And then there's about $700 million for these student loan repayments, additional student loan repayments in addition to what New York has, as well as these training programs that'll really be, curriculum, sort of standard training programs. And then a separate pot of money, which is actually not in this, is continuous eligibility for kids from 0 to age 6. So one of the things that happens in Medicaid is kids churn in and out if their parents, sign up or don't sign up or, whatever, for various reasons. So this actually gives continuous Medicaid eligibility all the way through. But it's a different payment structure. So this is the heroes, the hero that's being called, just one hero. Only one hero in New York State now. They're gonna get $125 million over the course of these 3 years. And they're gonna theoretically put together all the data. There'll be regional needs assessments and planning. They're gonna be supporting theoretically the move to value-based payment, right? Paying for outcomes or episodes of care as opposed to individual care activities, and then evaluating the waiver. So this will really be tightly controlled by the state. The social care networks for this $500 million are going to do a lot of things. They're supposed to create an organization, somewhat like the district performing provider systems, which is what these systems were called. They're gonna have a governance structure. They're gonna contract with all the managed care organizations in their area. They're gonna manage these payments. They're gonna sort of oversee that. They're gonna develop an IT platform. They're gonna work with all the CBOs in their neighborhood, and they're gonna work with other folks as well. So here it says that I actually think the applications were not due on March 27th. I think they were there.
They were pushed.
They were pushed, right?
I
Yeah.
thought it was, for some reason I thought it was April 5th, but it could,
I think it's
it could be the 9th, I can't remember.
Yeah, it was either, today, tomorrow, Monday, something like that. So then these are the kinds of things that they're gonna pay for with this $3.4 billion. They're gonna pay, so everyone's gonna get screened, right? This is a big thing. So one of the things that we all want data, right, to drive our decisions. So the idea is that they're gonna screen every Medicaid patient to figure out if they need something. This is gonna be a mammoth undertaking, and I think there's a lot of effort being thought about the screening, probably more than about the delivery of services, again, my opinion. There's a number of things for housing supports. We all know housing is critically important, right? It's a huge driver of one of the health-related social needs. So it's going to be helping people, they're going to contract with organizations to help people who are unstably housed to find housing, people who work in the shelters, a whole various things. They could actually pay for some rent and utilities, which is really important. Home modifications, as I was saying, grab bars and showers, those kinds of things, and medical respite. Nutrition counseling, things like that, and could be actually medically tailored meals, a really important concept that's happening a lot. Maybe some money going to, fresh food prescriptions or, farmers markets, that kind of thing, and then actually helping people like with cooking supplies. Transportation, right now, if you're a person on Medicaid, you can get transportation reimbursement to get to your medical appointment, but not necessarily to your social service appointment. So this is a way to help that. And then care and case management. So the idea here is that not everyone gets these services, and there's a list, and I'm not gonna go through it now, but there's a list of eligibility, there's tiers of eligibility. It's a little bit complicated. So everyone's gonna get screened. And some people are going to fit into category 1, some people fit into category 2, and some people won't fit into anything. So that's kind of the sorting process that's going to happen. The other thing that's interesting in this is that there's going to be about $2.2 billion to help some safety net hospitals that are distressed. So unfortunately, probably not Elmhurst. But hospitals that are distressed, that really provide critically important services in their community. And the idea is that the state has been sort of shoring up these hospitals for a very long time with a lot of money. And what they want to do is figure out a way to get to this thing called global budgeting, which the theory here is that basically what you want to do is you want to say, so hospitals get paid like everybody else based on admissions and discharges, right? That's how you get paid. And if you have more admissions, you get more money. And so, just as an aside, when I worked on an asthma program in Southwest Brooklyn, we basically reduced the asthma hospitalization rate, admission rate for pediatrics for kids that we work with by like 80%. This was great news for us, not so much for the CEO of the hospital, who was not so thrilled with this. And so the program didn't continue, even though the point was these kids got better, right? You can do something about this, but you have to have the right incentives. So the idea here is if the hospital gets global budget, we know that you're a distressed hospital, we think you're an anchor institution, we think you're critically important, and we're gonna give you money. But we want you to think about what your community needs. So the theory is that they will move towards this idea of being paid for outcomes, and they will move towards the idea that they could pay not only for people coming into their hospital, but also for the ancillary services like primary care in particular, that those community members need in order to keep them safe and out of the hospital, but guaranteeing a certain amount of money. Now, the theory is that they're going to get there in 3 years. Now, we remember, though, that these are financially distressed hospitals, so they're in the toughest position. And so this is a lot of planning, this is an attempt to get them there. And the reason that the state is doing this, so this may be more information than any of you really want to know, which is that there's a federal program called the AHEAD program, which is a Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services model. And they basically are, one of the aspects of that is to create global budgeting. There's a couple places in the country where this has been tried, Maryland in particular, and the CMS believes that this is one way in order to transform the healthcare system to really work on getting outcomes as opposed to paying for admissions, right? So again, go back to the diabetic amputations, no one should have one. If you need one, we need a hospital, but really we should work on the other end of the spectrum to make sure that people don't need one, right? There's a couple hospitals, it's only private hospitals in downstate. That's the state's decision, and they will get some of this funding. And the idea here is that this is the Medicaid money that will go along with the CMS Medicare money, so they'll have multi-payer alignment. And so this is one of the big problems, right, with anybody. So how many different payers you got at this hospital? 50?
Probably, yeah.
Okay, 50 different payers. Well, everybody's got a different program, everybody's got a thing, whatever. So if you had CMS, which is Medicare, remember all those people, and you had Medicaid, remember all those people, what did we say now? This is like probably 70% of the population, like multi-payer alignment, then you could actually, in a safety net, make a big difference. Now, that's theoretical, and we hope that that will work, but it will be interesting to see how that works. So,
But just ask,
But are the payers gonna give CMS the money, or is
No,
CMS
this-
not gonna
this-
give the money to the payers?
it's for fee-for-service Medicare, with the idea that they are going to try to get the Medicare Advantage plans to go along with that. But it's, right now, it's fee-for-service Medicare, which is a much smaller amount than the Medicare Advantage, which is.
so when you say global budgeting, I've always understood global budgeting is you're tying together all the services that a particular individual might experience under one payment.
Oh, no, that's the bundled payment, that's a bundled payment, in
but
my
that's-
understanding?
but that's not what you're talking
No,
about.
that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is the hospital, I'm just gonna make up numbers here because I don't know what they are, but like, say a hospital needs, remember the amount of money that's attached to this is substantial, it's $2.2 billion, and there may be like 10 hospitals that are gonna participate. So you're gonna get maybe, whatever, $500 million. Say you get $100 million a year. The idea is that that's your whole budget. You're not getting any more. That's all your Medicaid budget. That's what you're getting, theoretically.
Okay, so you remain accountable for what happens with the Medicaid population. And should their utilization of services go up?
That's your problem.
That's your problem.
Right, so if you have a sicker population, the idea is to provide them with more money. This is why these financially distressed hospitals are the target for this. I think this is a humongous lift. And this alone would be, think about the distressed hospitals in the downstate area. All of you have one in your mind, right? Okay, so those hospitals are the most struggling, and now they're gonna be told, you now have to do this in order to get this money. The first year's planning, you can continue to do whatever, but it's a big lift, and they're already struggling. So this replaces probably a certain amount of money that they're gonna get. So this is basically who's gonna get some of these funds. You can see they've got to have an operating margin that's, a 0%, not including COVID. They've got subsidies, they're gonna get other things, but they have to have an equity plan and quality improvement activities and have the roadmap. Imagine that financially distressed hospital that you all have in your brain in Brooklyn. How are they gonna do this?
I have a stupid question. The hospital I'm thinking about is public, I thought.
They're not eligible, public hospitals are not eligible.
They're not eligible, and I can see they're the ones that need the help. The one I'm thinking about, and maybe I'm misunderstanding which hospital would need the help. Cause I'm thinking of one or two that are struggling. Oh, there is one, okay, I think of one in Suffolk, that was in Suffolk.
Okay.
But, so what happens to them? That's.
Well, they're not getting this,
Yeah, we're not gonna.
they're not getting this money.
Which is unfair.
What are they getting?
Yeah, what are they,
Well, they're not getting anything.
So who came up with this? So a private hospital gets like a.
Well, okay, they're gonna get their regular reimbursement, and they're gonna be participating in these social care networks, and they're gonna be, but they're not gonna get anything from the waiver necessarily,
But they're not getting anything for the waivers, it's.
not specifically.
But I have a question.
Yeah, but I can't defend the decision per se.
No, because we talk about the distressed hospitals here in the city, and many of them, from my view, are a lot of the city hospitals that take care of so many of the, individuals that do not qualify for Medicaid, the indigent population that does not get Medicaid, that's not Medicaid covered. So they are the ones that seem to need this global pot of gold, as you may say, to support the services that they provide. Right now, I know from the state level, the HAC, from my understanding, are advocating to get more of the funding from the state, because a lot of the private hospitals are getting a significant amount of money, yet they're not the one taking care of the indigent population.
Right, so you're talking about there's a slightly different issue here, which is we have in the city, you think about Manhattan and the, east side of Manhattan and the west side of Manhattan, you've got the big five, you've got the big five private organizations, big four really. You've got Northwell, Mount Sinai, Columbia Presbyterian, NYU. They're not getting any of this money either.
So who's getting this money?
The distressed private hospitals, so.
Which ones are those in New York?
So I'm just gonna name some, like Maimonides, Wyckoff, Interfaith, Brookdale, these are just some of the ones that might be eligible for those funds. Jamaica Hospital. Right, those folks. So basically what they're saying is these are the people that we think are gonna be eligible for this CMS money, therefore we're giving them an additional boost. But let me say that there's a lot of other reimbursement that goes into hospitals. I mean, this is just the waiver monies. So, and to be fair, the city subsidizes health and hospitals fairly substantially. So there are other funds coming in for the public hospitals, and the state subsidizes the SUNY system, fairly heavily. But nonetheless, this is the conversation. So, I mean, anyway, it's more complicated than this, but this is sort of the very top line of it, and I'm probably not doing it justice. But then there are and I'm not gonna go through this. This is the Career Pathways Training Program. Again, my sense is that these are folks that, whether you're in long-term care, or whether you're in a hospital, whether you're in some other folks, these are the kinds of people who are gonna get training, and it's all very curriculum-based. And so I think the idea is to bring more people, bring a bigger pipeline into the healthcare system. This is not, secondary education. This is really, after someone has, a licensure of some kind, credential of some kind. And then there obviously is some interest in community health workers and patient care managers. They'll get some of this training money, but it's, $646 million over 3 years, it's pretty substantial. It seems like
Louise, when
They
they
can have
say
more.
like PAs and are they paying for their schools?
it's not to get credentialed, it's after they're credentialed for specific kinds of, like there might be a pathway of,
For like PA health?
thinking about a certificate in diabetes care or something like that. Like there are very specific pieces of curriculum that have been developed already by the WIOs. I know that there was a lot that went into long-term care last time around, some of you may be familiar with that. And that those are the folks who will be designing these training programs. Then there's $48 million of additional money in student loan payment, not very much, but there's substantial. So I think there's a lot of places where there's just not sufficient access, points for a lot of these clinicians. There's already loan repayment programs happening in New York State. This is, fairly small, an additional 50 primary care docs and 50 dentists. It's kind of a drop in the bucket in my mind, in terms of what's available. I'm gonna skip, okay, so the waiver has, remember, fundamentally, it's all about the social care networks and the health-related social needs. That's what this waiver's about. It's what 99% of the discussion is gonna be. The hospitals were kind of thrown in later, for a thing like the global budgeting when CMS came out with this. Separate and apart from the waiver, the state is going to be enhancing payments through the patient-centered medical home recognition program. Remember, I talked about that earlier, for primary care. And they're gonna do even more for primary care that serves children. So whether it's a pediatric office or a family practice office. And basically, they're going to give enhanced monthly payments for this patient-centered medical home recognition. It's a per member per month amount. To be honest, what this does is it just restores the PCMH bump to where it used to be before they took it down a couple of years ago. So it's really essentially restoring funding that was previously cut in the budget. It's going through a process called state-directed payments, so it's outside of the waiver program. A state-directed payment can have a federal match, but it's basically a commitment from the state to do this, but the state has to get permission from CMS in order to structure a program, and that's what the state-directed payment is. They don't, as I understand it, have that agreement yet. And they're trying to move these folks from paying for recognition, which is a very specific thing, to paying for some kind of, in some value-based payment arrangement, which is not yet specified. So I don't know what that will look like. Now, so I told you about the AHEAD program from CMS. Well, there's 2 more primary care focused programs for Medicare fee-for-service coming out of CMS. One is called Making Care Primary. And New York State decided that program would be available only to people upstate, and the AHEAD model would be available for people downstate. A practice has to apply to be part of Making Care Primary. It's an innovation model out of the Innovation Center at CMS. And so the theory that the state has is that you'll get your Medicaid, you'll get your bump from patient-centered medical home, and you'll get this Making Care Primary bump, and all of it will bring more money into the primary care system. I think the reality of it is there's very few practices ultimately that will be part of Making Care Primary. We have not seen a big uptake so far, and so we will see where this goes. But this is, again, not in the current waiver, so there's no guarantee of this money coming through. So for primary care, I'm just going to end. I have 2 more slides. This is it. So what do I see for primary care in particular? So there's some workforce development. Some of those folks will have access to those training programs, some loan forgiveness programs. That's great. There'll be some increased reimbursement through patient-centered medical home. Not every practice that provides primary care in New York State to the safety net, to Medicaid recipients is certified. So there's some need to get more folks certified, but there'll be, those folks who are getting that money will get more of it. It's great that they're going to continue reimbursement for kids, because we know that it's vitally important that kids under 6 retain their medical care, right? And we know that there'll be this health-related social needs. One of the things I want to point out is it's like, for example, for those of you who work in long-term care, you could theoretically be part of the organizations that would help your patients get some of these health-related social needs paid for. So that could be a good thing for you. There are challenges though, which is that now we have the idea that there's going to be state and federal harmony on these various plans. A primary care provider has to figure out how to join in on this. You have to proactively apply for things. They're going to have to relate to these social care networks. So say you're in Elmhurst, we'll say, for example, there'll be one social care network in Queens likely, right? So that you're going to be able to navigate that. But maybe you're a primary care system, a federally qualified health center that has sites in the Bronx, Manhattan, Queens, and Brooklyn, which there are some. They're now going to have to be part of 4 social care networks, likely, and that's going to be a big challenge for them because it's hard enough to coordinate with one, much less 4. The increases for primary care are all contingent on these federal Medicare programs. And it's just unclear whether those, how fast or whether those are going to have uptake. And the other thing is there's no money in this waiver. There was money in the last waiver to help primary care providers, or anybody else really for that matter, like figure out how to do this stuff. So for example, the hospitals, there's no technical assistance money in the waiver for the hospitals who are supposedly going to get to global payments. They have to figure out how to do that on their own. Now they could spend some of their money on technical assistance, but there isn't a technical assistance provider here in any way whatsoever. And that was true in the last waiver, so we're not happy about that. And then finally, just in terms of the health-related social needs, if you have to screen everyone, I don't know how many of you were involved in health homes? Anybody? So the thing is, if you're someone on Medicaid and you go to your primary care provider and then they screen you for this health-related social needs, and then you go to a CBO, they ask you the exact same questions before I give you any services, could you answer this 20-page questionnaire? Like, it's really kind of crazy. So the idea is that they're going to build a data system so that won't happen, but, how fast could they build a data system? I mean, they're not hiring Amazon to do it, right? Amazon could do it, maybe, Google, whatever. We're not hiring those folks. We're hiring someone who, is hopefully we're gonna build a data system. And likely the likely candidate is the statewide information network. But they don't have any experience really doing this, so it's not gonna be like tomorrow they can turn it on. So I think there's going to be some challenges for patients, but there's some opportunities for patients. There's challenges for primary care, and there's challenges for all of the organizations that are doing this. I think this is a fairly large crapshoot on the part of the state, and I think if they can get the money out the door for the health-related social needs, and they don't do anything else, we'll consider it a success. But I feel like all of you will be involved in this, and your opinions are really important and how you think this is going to work. So I'm done with, I'm glad to engage in conversation, but I don't have more answers.
So I have to wonder, I've always wondered, I guess. If you're on Medicaid, you're a Medicaid recipient, your options for getting care are rather limited. You can't just go to any private practicing doctor or even a group of doctors because they won't accept the Medicaid rates. And yet it seems year after year, constantly, we're coming up with these new initiatives from the state, whether it's through 1115 waiver or otherwise, and throwing more money into Medicaid. And then that money is received by the provider community, but whether they succeed in trying and achieving the outcomes that were forecasted or not, that they keep the money anyway. So it would seem to me, I don't quite understand, I've never quite understood, why don't you just raise the Medicaid rates that the primary care physicians can receive, and even a specialist for that matter, and let them set up, like under Medicare you have accountable care organizations. And those accountable care organizations give them incentive to share in the savings.
Well, from your lips to the state health department, I totally agree with you. This is a roundabout way of getting money from the feds to do some of these things. And the fact of the matter is, so if you go back to the beginning of the, conversation, 5 cents on the dollar, primary care can't do all these things for 5 cents on the dollar, right? We have to figure out a way to get much more money into that system, upfront money, so they can prepare to do these things. Listen, the distressed hospitals also need funding, but they also need, we need to figure out what we want to do with them, in other words. Like, so your point about you can't, how do you think about, continuing to finance organizations that may or may not be able to do the things that we need them to do? And again, this is all about health-related social needs. So if we can get people who are Medicaid recipients additional support for things like rent, for things like an air conditioner if they've got COPD, for things like grab bars if they're an older adult so that they don't fall in their bathroom, for help navigating housing to get an apartment, like that would all be really, really beneficial. So I'm all for that, and I think that's great. To be honest, I think there was some controversy with the state and the CMS about what to emphasize. The state was very committed to the health-related social needs. I think the CMS wanted them to do more around primary care and hospitals and so forth, and so I think there was a negotiation. So this is a little bit of a Frankenstein, I think. But we'll see, you watch where the money, this is what I would say to all of you, is watch the money, follow the money. Like where the money is what's gonna happen. So,
If I could,
Any
just,
other questions?
yeah, just a little tag on to what Dennis just said. We talk about the money, we talk about primary care. But what we see a lot today, and it's been in the paper a lot, mental and behavioral health.
Yeah.
And that's gonna take a little bit more time, there's a little bit more money. And how is that being addressed? I mean, I've seen some things in social media and in the papers that talk about the governor's been suppressing some of this stuff. So, unless maybe I'm reading wrong, but if I see today's day, mental health with the young kids, I think is all because of a lot of social media as well.
well, so you and the city health commissioner are just like that on that issue, so he's really all over this social media thing. So in this waiver, there's nothing about behavioral health.
I know.
Nothing at all, actually. There's a lot of other funding coming into into behavioral health organizations through other routes, whether it's through the federal, sort of administration. But the money comes in very categorical, right? It comes in for addiction services or substance use services. It comes in for, kids or adults with mental illness or, whatever. So I think one of the biggest challenges for most behavioral health organizations is to figure out how do you grade all that money together to get the services to the person who may have 3 or 4 or 5 of these things.
Right.
But my belief is that there should be no wrong door. If you're someone who walks into primary care and you need behavioral health services, you should be able to get them either there or through a very easy referral. If you're someone who is engaged in the addiction or substance use disorder services, or you have severe mental illness, you should be able to get your primary care through that door in some way, either through that organization or through a very close referral. And that's what we don't have quite yet, but I think there's a lot of interest in moving towards that. So it's not an answer to your question. The waiver doesn't say anything about, social needs theoretically could be behavioral health services. It's hard to know what that's actually like. And it's for people, some of the categories are for people with serious mental illness or coming out of jail or prison or one of those things. So it's kind of a line, but not quite, didn't actually get there. So and I'm sure that those folks would tell you much more about what they think about it. Did you have a question?
Yeah.
Or a comment?
So I feel like I went from illiterate to having primary education in primary care. Oh, thank you. So like Helen said, I feel like eating more, maybe a cookie or something. I was going to ask
vegetables, that's really all I can say.
I was going to ask a mental health question, but you already asked that, so I got an idea. But I also had this thought about how is the primary care system adapting to artificial intelligence? Are you preparing people for that? How is that going to phase out or maybe enhance the system? How does funding kind of play out in it?
It's an interesting question and a little bit outside of my sphere of, of experience. I think it's a generational issue to a certain extent. I think there's a lot of platforms out there who all say, oh, with a touch of a button and AI, you can do these amazing things. And I think we're not quite there yet. I think I guess I'm cautiously optimistic that AI will provide some of those things, but I think we don't yet know. There's a lot of interesting discussions about sort of the background hidden algorithms about like, if you said, okay, what's the diagnosis or treatment for this thing, like where are they getting that information from and is it really the most accurate? So I think we still need docs, we still need clinicians, we still need of all stripes who can really kind of sort through that stuff to understand the evidence. But over time, that might be a really valuable resource. I think the average primary care provider probably doesn't use that at all. And they may have systems behind them that have some AI algorithms that they don't even know what they are. So I'm cautious about it, but optimistic in the future. It's not all about it.
I think that I'm from the old school. How old? I won't say. But my concern is called data, and it's called health information systems, health information technology, because I go way back when we talked about the Obama administration and meaningful use and run out and everyone had to have EMR, and I ran all over the country trying to help providers in underserved community get their EMRs and try to unite the country as it relates to healthcare and data and health information technology. And then we moved to the Rios and we've been regions, everyone is going to get together and share information. And then Northwell decided that they really didn't like Mount Sinai and they didn't want to change, and we pretty much where we are going back then. So my concern is this is a lot of information that will be required to talk about screening, and we still have not addressed the issue of information and data collection, data sharing, consistency in the data. You talk about AI, that sounds like a good thing, but defining how Mount Sinai is using it versus Northwell and what capacity to what extent, that is far out. So with this program, the 1115 waiver, my concern really has to do with information exchange and sharing, and the fact that we do not have a robust system from a health from technology perspective to be able to do this. And that was demonstrated through at the time of COVID, where we don't have a public health system that is able to address this because we have not invested in it. With that said, it wasn't a question, it's just I get over with releasing all these thoughts that I have in occasions like this. So, thank you very much, Dr. Arteaga-Landaverde. I get such excitement of pronouncing her name in Spanish. And Louise Cohen for this wonderful presentation. It's obvious that those of us that are involved in this industry was able to, put our thoughts together with what's coming, and also those that didn't have no idea also got information and benefit from this presentation. And for that, we thank you very much. We also would like to thank Dr. Landaverde for hosting this and for the facilities, the food, her staff. They have been lovely, and so we appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
A couple of things before we actually will have some thank you for you, but before we do that quickly, just to remind you to complete your surveys, the yellow document there, you will be getting your 1.5 credit, those that are interested, needed, and qualify. And this is recorded, and you will have access to information once it's edited. And so now we really want to thank you the way how we do it at Healthcare at the Health Club, and that is to Dennis.
So if you could both come up for a moment, appreciate it. It's customary for us, and Tony, you want to come up for a moment? Tony? It's customary for us to show our gratitude by presenting.
He wants us to go this way.
This way.
Oh,
Who's this guy? Does he come from NBC or CBS?
All right.
And Verna, you want to come up for a minute? So, okay. Since you're the only one here, I think, from Risk Management Group?
Yes.
Why don't you come up?
Sure.
Okay, so we're presenting to,
Everybody take another half a step to the right.
We have to get close.
Is this good?
okay, this is more trouble than I thought it was worth. Okay, so
Professionals.
Louise, thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much.
Okay, and Helen, thank you.
Oh, thank you
Okay,
so much.
and I would ask you over the boxes.
Sure.
Take a look. Okay, we're presenting you with a very
Oh,
nice
they're
plaque.
so
We hope
beautiful.
you'll put it somewhere prominent.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's great.
Beautiful.
Okay. That's from the 4 professional associations that organized this, okay?
Oh, thank you.
That's lovely.
Sure.
Really
Thank
appreciate
you,
it.
thank you
This
so
was
much, thank you.
great. Yeah.
It's so pretty.
You wanna
Do you wanna
take
take
a-
Better, you wanna get a picture, I guess, where can we
Why
stand?
don't we get like everyone who's
Yeah.
here, like come up
Yeah.
and we'll get a
Yeah, take you one picture.
You wanna take a picture?
Yeah.
Take a picture.
Oh, yeah.